Jai Hind and welcome to Dev Talks. The Pakistan connection with the ISIS is something that actually eludes a lot of the strategic analysts around the world when they talk about this region. The sudden emergence of the ISIS in the Afghanistan region has brought about many a question as to who's funding this group, who's backing this group, and what is happening in that place. To discuss all this, I have with me Mr. Abhinav Pandya, founder and CEO of the USANAS Foundation, a geopolitical think tank. Apart from that, an author of Radicalization in India, something that we need to be worried about in the coming future. Thank you, sir, for joining me for this very, very interesting discussion. What is the connection between the Pakistan state, army, the deep state with the ISIS?
Thank you very much, Aadi, for inviting me. In fact, I've been watching and listening about your videos for quite some time, and I must congratulate you for taking this initiative because such, I would say, objective and well-reasoned academic debates are needed on these subjects. So thank you so much for inviting. Okay, my book's name is Radicalization in India and Exploration. And this is the book. If anyone wants to buy it, this is on Amazon. Yes, so today you have raised a very, very interesting and a very valid point to this whole specter of ISISk or ISKP. And so on 26th August, so there were Kabul blast, and the very next day everyone talks about ISISk, ISIS Khorasan province, all that. Just go 6 months back or like until last year, okay, Feb 2020, when Afghanistan, the Trump government was signing the Doha Accords with the Taliban. So they were mostly okay talking about, well, you won't let Al Qaeda function from your territory or any other foreign terrorist regime. And mostly the talks were basically surrounding Taliban and Taliban's dynamics and how it's going to pan out and how to effectively shape your withdrawal, so that there is no embarrassment. But I mean, behind the scenes, something else was going on, completely different. Okay, there were major state actors. Americans believed that it was just Zalmay Khalilzad and his negotiations with Pakistan, but there was a lot more. Since the main focus of today's talk is not the U.S. Negotiations, so I'm not going into that. But certainly there were forces which wanted and which basically favored an embarrassing withdrawal of the U.S. And ultimately, it happened as if Pakistan had all its cards in the right place and they were all well prepared to orchestrate and manage that kind of embarrassment for the US. Once it gets done, after that, what are the concerns? American President Biden gets, abused left, right, and center for such an embarrassing and bungled withdrawal. Okay, such a mismanagement. Okay, and especially after this, there's this huge that Taliban completely violated your agreement and all. Okay, so now in such an embarrassment, and when on the other hand, China comes up as a major player, Turkey comes up as a major player, Russia emerges as a critical stakeholder. Okay, so all this adds up to the US embarrassment. Now, how to salvage the situation? How to come out of the situation clean and with some kind of a manageable prestige? Okay, that can happen only when you are able to put Taliban in some good light, that yes, they are also terror groups, but still they are the manageable actors and we can work with them. And there's this bigger specter of ISISk, which is a major threat. And we have to work with Taliban and Pakistan against this group. Now, this particular narrative suited the American interest because they wanted a respectable withdrawal. Because if they get to raise Taliban, ISKP as a major new terror threat, then at least their decision to withdraw from the Afghanistan gets justified, despite the embarrassment which accompanied it. Because right now, the US government, President Biden, they are getting huge flack from across the strategic quarters in the US for such a messy and bungled withdrawal. Because until recently, when there were just 5,000 troops, American troops in Afghanistan, Taliban could not dare to attack the Kabul city. And, Taliban, they were on the margins, they were on the periphery. And still the government, it was corrupt and whatever. They are different things, but it was still able to manage the situation. So there's this huge criticism from various quarters that, this withdrawal decision is wrong, first of all. And secondly, the way it happened, it's even worse, because that was an absolute embarrassment of the so-called world power. Now, to come out a little cleaner from that situation, to get some prestige, you need to put Taliban and Pakistan as a better players, as allies in the war against terror, and ISIS as a bigger enemy. So it suits American interests. Secondly, raising ISIS suits the Pakistani interest, because Pakistan doesn't want to discontinue its ties with America. They could stage a humiliating embarrassment. That's perfectly fine, but still, they still realize that no, Americans can still be fleeced. They can still squeeze, the better technology, monetary resources from the Americans, which is something which they've been doing for the last 50, 60 years, and they have mastered the art of, duping Americans, especially the Western power, So they just want to continue the game, double game, keeping the pretense of being an American ally in the war against terror, and at the same time sheltering, funding terrorists. Okay. Previously, it was Taliban. Now Taliban and Al Qaeda. Now it is ISISk. Just the names change. Okay, that's it. Now coming to the original question, what is this ISISk? 6 months back, no one, the people hardly spoke about ISISk. It was just a convenient tool that, ISIS is spreading to Afghanistan, ISIS Khorasan provinces, the original ISIS is dead and they are making their foothold in this region. Then some analysts were just trying to say that, no, this is nothing but just an offshoot of the original ISIS, and it has just local elements and it is not going to make much difference. Okay, Suddenly, the same analyst, the same group now says that, well, Taliban and they are all sworn enemies, and Pakistan is a sworn enemy. This is a major ISIS-like group. And what is the reason? Well, frankly speaking, in that area, you have big heavyweights. You have Haqqani network, which is on the Pakistani payroll, sheltered, funded, and sponsored by Pakistan for decades now, for almost last 20 years. Okay, it's like a Pak proxy. You have Jaish-e-Mohammed, another Pakistan's proxy. You have Lashkar-e-Taiba, which is just like a Pak army without uniform. That's it. You have Harkatul Mujahideen. You have Taliban. Now imagine, is it possible for any new kid on the block to survive without the blessings of ISI, which is the common denominator in all these terror groups? Is it possible?
That's an
first question. Okay? Yeah. Second, ISISk has disgruntled elements from Taliban. It has disgruntled elements. It has elements from TTP, some from Al Qaeda, then Uzbekistan. Okay, then Indians also joined from Kerala, about 100, I guess. Okay, so in that region, all these people. So that area. Well, we need to look at it in a slightly different matrix. Okay, it's not just the ideology. Certainly, ideology is at the bedrock. But then that area has become some kind of a cesspool of various jihadist actors. So suppose if you don't like a particular firm, if they're not offering a better package, or if you have some quarrel, tussle with you, you just quit that and you go and join some other organization. So it's just like that. Okay, you're not happy with Taliban, you quit Taliban, go and join ISIS. Okay, if you're not happy with Lashkar, come and join ISIS. Okay, so it's just like that. And most of these dissatisfactions, they are not over the ideology. They are over the distribution of resources, the financial part, the sharing of the opium trade, receipts and all. Leadership issues, turf wars. Okay, that, well, I want to be the area commander of this particular patch. Okay, if you don't make me, I leave and go and join ISIS. These are these issues. That's it. Otherwise, ideologically, Taliban, ISISk, they're both Sunni hardliner extremist organizations. They deliver the same treatment to Shias, same treatment to females, to minorities, and to people who don't subscribe to their ideology. It's almost the same. There is hardly any difference. Thirdly,
very interesting, sir. Please go on.
Thank you. Thirdly, this is a very traditional and a very time-tested intelligence practice. I always say that international relations are different. They are more of the domain of academicians and diplomats. But then the strategic part, this security part, the intelligence part, that's an entirely different world. And that is like a flame which keeps the whole world of IR and diplomacy alive. It keeps burning. Okay, but the intelligence world is the engine, and it's a time-tested practice in the intelligence world to infiltrate your people in various organizations. For instance, I'll just give one example. China is India's adversary, okay? Or maybe Pakistan is India's adversary. China is India. Okay? In India also, if you see, there is a group of left liberals who would support, who would be favorable towards China. Okay, left liberal intellectuals or even newspapers. Then there will be right-wing organizations who will be bitterly opposing China. But the Chinese intelligence, if they have to operate, this is how a typical intelligence organization will operate. they will infiltrate their people not only in the leftist liberal groups but also in the right wing groups who are criticizing China. That's how they operate. Similarly, Pakistan's intelligence agency, they infiltrated this new Islamist group called ISKP, ISIS Khorasan Province, with their cadres over the last 5-6 years. This organization came up in 2016 when I guess a very prominent original ISIS commander, Adnani or something, he made a declaration and then this organization came up. This was a local organization. It hardly had any very strong connection with the original ISIS, which is kind of more or less dead or dysfunctional now. But this organization came up. Then in that area, Pakistan, the ISI has a very strong control over the geography, logistical, and other dynamics of that area. So they infiltrated ISISk with their cadres. And if you see, most of the top leadership came from Lashkar and Haqqani. Like you have people, Ismail Punjabi. Ismail Punjabi was a very prominent ISIS Khorasan terrorist. He was a former Lashkar guy. You have Abdur Rahim Muslim Dost, another very prominent ISIS terrorist, okay, former Lashkar. You have Aslam Faruqi, the ISIS commander who was involved in that famous attack on Gurdwara, which killed 27 Sikhs. He has a Lashkar background. Okay. Then another fellow, Abdur Rahib Logari, Leghari, I think. This fellow was with Haqqani network. Earlier, Haqqani is ISI's proxy. So these linkages you can always see, And then there was a very clear distribution of the terror labor. Haqqani network in that area, like they are the real muscle men in that area. They control the vast criminal enterprise of this, drug trade, opium trade. Yeah. So they have the political clout, they have the military clout. It is not possible for an entity like ISIS Khorasan province to go against Haqqani network and just come up as a major organization. And Haqqani network is ISI proxy. So there was a clear-cut distribution of terror labor. Now Pakistan realized that since this organization has come up, why not better make some use of it? Okay? This is an organ in terms of power and in terms of the power equation. This falls at the last end of the spectrum, ISIS Khorasan province. Okay, so how they divided the terror labor? The recruits were trained. Cadres were trained in the Jash training camps of Matan and some other name also they say in this Fatah region and in Afghanistan. Then Lashkar did the recce surveillance of high-profile targets, which would generate some social and political consequences in Afghanistan. Okay. Then Haqqani network, being the most powerful entity in that area, would provide logistics and coordination support. And ISIS Khorasan province did the propaganda work and provided the cannon fodder, who would go and blow themselves up. So this was a very nice division of terror labor. And I really appreciate it. One should always, work in such a cooperative manner. They were having such a wonderful coordination and cooperation. Okay, this is, it happens if you have some genuine good intentions. Okay, all puns intended. So this is how it was working. Okay? This entire thing. Okay? And then if you see, yes, I covered the ideology part. Yes, ISIS Khorasan province was also getting a share in the Haqqani network's criminal enterprise of drugs. That's how they were generating economic resources. Now coming to the Kabul blasts. Okay, now the Haqqani network, which could throw out Abdullah Baradar, okay, Ghani Baradar from the reins of the power, and they could treat him very badly. Okay, they are in charge of the Kabul security. And you have several checkposts around the just in the area nearby the airport. Okay, tell me, is it possible for a second rung or a third rung terror group, to just send their Fidayeen squads, without even getting a certification from Haqqani network to that area and blow themselves up? Each and every vehicle was checked, but they were not. They could have, at the best, they could have done it with the blessings, the tacit support of the Pakistan strategic establishment and the Taliban. It cannot happen without that. And these organizations stand to gain from it, because if that that explosion happens, 250 people died. Now suddenly ISIS Khorasan province, which was some kind of a second level 2-tier organization, which had some estrayed youth from Kerala and some other chaps from that area, Now it gets in, it comes in the category of that original ISIS, Syria, Iraq style bombings, where you had casualty figures in the range of, 3-digit figures, 200, 250, 350, okay. Those massive vehicle borne IEDs, it comes in that category. So that benefits the US also, because they get some legitimate, some presentable justification, to defend their bungled and embarrassing withdrawal. Okay, and Pakistan also, gets an excuse to continue this whole business of, terror supporting and terror sponsoring and all that. It goes on like that. Okay? So and then, coming to my another point. See, ISISk is a Pakistan's creation or Pakistan's support. So all these dynamics work in a very different manner. Well, it might have come out of its own original, I would say, some kind of inspiration or whatever. But then, when it comes up, and when the Pakistan strategic establishment realizes its value, then they just come and, to take it up. They own the organization. I mean, they start their interaction and start engaging the organization. It helps Pakistan in many ways. Okay? First of all, if the Pakistan can put the blame, or ISIS Khorasan province can own up many explosions, many blasts, even in India and Pakistan. Okay, and Pakistan can claim deniability. Sorry, sir, that it's ISIS which has done. We have nothing to do. Okay, we are the victims. We are the poor victims. Okay, so that way it also gets some relaxation from the FATF and other UN bodies also. Secondly, if so, this is a standard practice of Pakistan to raise second level proxies, because sometimes when the first level proxies, the first layer gets too exposed, then you cannot manage with that. Okay? In Kashmir, they have done it. In Kashmir, if you see these days, there is an organization working, especially after the abrogation of Article 370, that was TRF, the Resistance Force, and there was the other group, People's Anti-Fascist Force. Now, these organizations, if you look at them, the TRF, it has a very secular sounding name. People's Anti-Fascist Force, this is also a very secular sounding name, and something which can be easily digested in today's India, because in today's India's political and social discourse, words like fascism, totalitarianism, intolerance, dictatorship, they are in vogue. Okay, they are very fashionable. So those minds are very strategic, and you must appreciate that. Okay, so they rolled out these organizations. Now, in reality, TRF is nothing but just an offshoot of Lashkar-e-Toiba. Similarly, People's Anti-Fascist Front is nothing but just an offshoot of Jaish-e-Mohammed. Now, why? What was the need? Because FATF was, madly after Pakistan, and the Pakistan's linkages with Jaish and Lashkar, they are too exposed. So, if anything is done by these two groups, immediately, the fingers will be pointed on towards Pakistan. Okay? That, well, you guys are behind these, heinous attacks and all. But if these two groups, with secular sounding names, if they come up, they could always say, well, this is, not Pakistan, they are secular sounding local groups. So this is the standard practice. Pakistan would raise a group like ISISk because, they have different strategic motives. And mind it, long back, Parvez Musharraf said that all these terror groups are our strategic assets.
Correct.
So if Pakistan has to, bring or put Taliban as a good boy, then they need another bad boy called ISISk. If they want to, explode something in India, like do a major terror attack and just come out completely, scot-free, then they need ISISk. But they do help ISISk in all the possible manner: logistics, training, finance. In fact, these linkages go back to 2016 when the organization started functioning. In those times when ISIS was recruiting people in Kerala, it was actually ISI which was doing the recruiting part on the ISIS behalf.
That's, it's a deep connection that you've established right here. And one thing that one can realize is the Pakistanis, as they've been doing for, since history, have been repackaging a lot of things and selling it to the world.
Yes.
They're good marketing managers.
Sure. Some people would always raise a question that, well, Taliban, some of the people who claim to be slightly deeper experts or better experts, they would say, well, Taliban is a Deobandi and, ISIS Khorasan is Wahhabi or extreme Salafi. How can they cooperate? They are sworn enemies. Okay. Well, again, this is a big smoke screen. Okay. Well, let me tell you. Yeah? Al-Qaeda, right from the beginning, Al-Qaeda is known to be a Salafi Wahhabi group extremist. But Al Qaeda has always worked with Taliban. They have always worked very comfortably with Jaish-e-Mohammed, Harkatul Mujahideen. They are all Deobandi groups. Keeping aside the ideological differences, these groups always work, with a very strong compromise and coordination, cooperation on tactical matters. In Kashmir also, Lashkar-e-Taiba is a Salfi Wahhabi group, okay, getting with very strong connections in the Gulf, okay, getting funding from that region. They work and they coordinate, cooperate with Hizbul Mujahideen, which believes in the Jamaat-e-Islami organized Maulana Maududi's political Islam ideology. They also, Hizbul Mujahideen also works very comfortably with Jaish-e-Mohammed, which is a Deobandi group. Again, Lashkar also has cooperated and coordinated with Jaish-e-Mohammed, which is a Deobandi group. So this, especially if someone is claiming that on the ideological ground, they are sworn enemies, and they cannot cooperate. I mean, this is nothing except a very shallow understanding of the terror dynamics. Okay?
That's interesting. So, Mike, the big question that comes out in this entire thing is one, you've established it pretty well that one, yes, most of the IS chaps are probably from the the list of terrorist organizations that operate between the AFPAC region, and that is something that is quite understandable because some of them want a certain additional radical element into their whole thing, so they're going that side or this side or whatever it is. Or I mean, it may as be the factor that one is offering a fighter $5,000 extra than the other, and he's just going there because it's pretty open that most of these fighters are there not because of ideological reasons, because they get paid really well. I mean, that was the case in Afghanistan as well. Taliban fighter would make more money than the Afghan army chap. So that makes a lot of sense. What I'm trying to drive at is that as a the bad boy created that by the Pakistan, as you mentioned, is it just so that Pakistan can still remain relevant in this entire region and direct the so-called war on terror against the IS from the world community and make a buck out of it? Is that their main motive currently?
Yeah, sure, certainly. I mean, so the Pakistan certainly wants to remain relevant, and I must say, Prime Minister Modi's made big, lofty claims about the diplomatic isolation of Pakistan, but unfortunately today we are kind of isolated, and Pakistan has, it has emerged as a central figure in this of Pak geopolitics, despite the fact that everyone knows that Pakistan is supporting Taliban and it's a real rogue regime existing in that area, but they've managed to come out as a very strong player because of their, I would say, shrewd diplomacy and the way they maneuvered things and all. So yes, they want to remain relevant. They want to continue getting money from the American strategic establishment, and I guess Americans also want to continue their love affair with the Pakistanis. Okay, just imagine a situation. It's like that. Okay, suppose in a college, okay, in an undergrad college or a master's college, if a boy falls in love with a girl, okay, maybe a one-sided love, then a thing start between a boy and a girl. Girl is not at all serious. She's dating that guy just for some kind of a physical intimacy or fun, but the guy is madly in love, and the girl is dating simultaneously 4-5 people at a time. The boy knows about it, and this is the problem, and she's not serious, but still mentally he's so vulnerable and weak, he's so dependent that he doesn't want to leave her. The US is in a similar situation. American establishment knows, and they have known in the past also, that Pakistan is a real culprit, but their army brass, their strategic establishment, they have a very good understanding or some kind of very emotional bonding with the Pakistani system, that they're not able to leave them. If let me bring you back to some very old incident. Robin Ruffel, she was the American diplomat, and she was I think serving in Pakistan. She was cultivated by ISI. It's all in the open domain. Just see. Her husband, he died in the same plane crash in which General Zia died. And that's why I say America and India, we are democracies. Prime Minister Modi, Vajpayee said that we are natural allies, which is perfectly fine. Indians are doing well. But then there is something, something really strange, or something really, I would say, something really screwed, like something very twisted with the American strategic establishment, that that they're not able to differentiate between their real friends and the real people who harm them. And same is the case with the British establishment also. That's why, I mean, this the US intel establishment and the army establishment, they've always shared a very good equation with the Pakistan on a one-on-one basis, with the Pak army general, the Pak embassy people and all. And, I mean, that continues, okay, and that will simply prevent any kind of major action against the Pakistan in the future also.
There are ups and downs.
Especially when,
yeah.
Yes. There, especially when Democrats are in power, chances are even less, because there is this very heavy penetration of Pakistan and Turkey and other, the Islamist lobby in the American, political system. If you go to Washington D.C. think tanks, the major prominent think tanks, I'm not going to name any of them, but I mean, so I think recently Christine Fair only, she also said in one of her interviews that some of these think tanks get their funding in return of getting access to the Pakistani establishment, and so they have their voices well placed in the right quarters. Some of the people, I guess there are some Indians also who were very pro Modi regime in the past, okay, and now they have started writing, they've started speaking a language, which is hardly different from what Haqqani network says or Taliban says, or even Pakistan says, and they are writing in some very prestigious portals of the US. There was one article long back which said, written by an Indian, which said that Pakistan is a victim of terrorism. Okay? Clearly, completely whitewashing Pakistan. So that's the problem, and unfortunately, we have not been able to understand the situation properly and respond properly. I mean, here you see, even now, like for instance, you have groups like Jamaat-e-Islami, PFI. Jamaat-e-Islami, though banned, but still it's functioning with intensified rigor and intensity in Kashmir. Yeah. Jamaat-e-Islami, though banned, but still it's functioning with the same ferocity and rigor, with much more grassroots penetration. Another group, PFI, which is a very hardcore, Salafi Islamist group of Kerala, they are also functioning very actively in Kerala, and these groups many of the PFI cadres have joined ISIS, former PFI cadres. They have their open linkages with the terror groups have come out, and these groups can be the conduits for all the future ISI work or the ISIS work in India.
Yeah, it's just a matter of a handshake at the end of it.
Yeah, yes, definitely. True. So we should not, I mean, I would really suggest that, some of the Indian analysts who are kind of differentiating, going into these nitty-gritties of what is ISISk and what is Taliban. Well, these are just superficialities, okay? And for us, I'll just quote a very famous, saying from Indian mythology. One is Nagnath and another is Sapnath. Okay? Nag and Saap, they both mean the same. So, they say that ek Nagnath hai to dusra Sapnath hai. So for us, it's the same.
Same, yeah. Probably a different face, but the product at the end of it is the same.
Yes.
That's interesting.
And the unmoved mover, once again quoting from Aristotle's metaphysics, the unmoved mover, that is also the same. That is ISI.
That's the baseline for the entire thing, sir.
Well, you can imagine the beauty. It's so philosophical. This whole terror network, the chessboard, that I had to bring in Aristotle.
It's an amazing thing that actually the congressional hearings, if you hear it, Senator Marco Rubio called Pakistan is a third-rate country. So when the US actually calls a third-rate country something, but one must understand today we are in a place where think tanks across the world are trying to figure out what the hell is Pakistan up to, because it's something that we cannot understand. As you've very clearly brought out here, that the IS is just the same band of yes. I'm sorry, I'm going to use a very crass word, but the same gang of baboons with a different flag. So it's their purpose is just the same. So my last question to you, one of the things that you've brought out here is that the repackaging of this entire thing has been done, and this seems, if when one looks back and thinks about the entire history of the ISISk in this particular region, yes, there was a bit of a presence which was nullified by the tons of airstrikes and the drone strikes that was done. So they might have gone here and there and this and that, and this is probably spread out into the thing. But the presence of these guys has just come up about 2-3 months ago, and they've started coming up in news videos, those flags popping up and this and that. And the most interesting thing that you brought out is that during the Kabul attack, not one Taliban fighter was killed.
Yes.
So that tells you that there is
very few, I guess, just a few. I guess a few people were killed, but that hardly matters. I mean,
it
that's
wasn't in
just
the
yeah.
ranking or anything like that, and it
Yes,
wasn't
yes,
brought out
yeah,
so wide in the open
yes,
that
yes,
you would
yes.
actually say, "Oh, Taliban got killed in the Kabul attack."
And even if, I mean, even if, see, it does for them, it's just a cannon fodder. Like,
Yeah,
even if some
yeah.
people, that's a collateral damage. So
My
that
question would
is
be, sir,
required to show to make your case here.
yeah, my question would be, so what do you think Pakistan would now look at doing? Because see, as far as the control is concerned, he's going to lose a bit of control within the Taliban as well, and that is coming out into the open because there is a rift within the Taliban. The people are not very happy over there. The international community might not back this particular government. The Pakistanis will have to create some sort of a terror apparatus. So, how do you think this whole thing is going to go forward? Because the Pakistanis would actually try and isolate Afghanistan furthermore, create a little worse situation so that the world jumps in later on to help it. And that can only happen with the presence of a radical Islamist organization like the ISIS. Would you agree with this sort of a hypothesis?
Well, a few fundamental things are very clear that this place is going to be the jihadist hub of not only South Asia, but I guess, I mean, having it something, a so-called jihadist hub with its ramifications, repercussions across the globe.
Hmm.
And Pakistan's intent here is to keep Afghanistan under its firm control and to keep all these strategic assets under its control. So Pakistan doesn't want to discontinue them. Okay, Pakistan doesn't even want them to go out of control. It wants these strategic assets to flourish and sustain, but then within the manageable limits. Okay, so
Hmm.
that will be the target. Secondly, China has stakes, and China will be pressurized. China will be operating mostly through routing its business through Pakistan. Okay. Now, China has economic interests. China is not going to, depute its, forces and soldiers in the Afghanistan quagmire. They will be more interested in the economic business. So they would prefer to do business with Pakistan. That, I mean, just try to manage these groups in some manner. That,
Hmm.
I mean, you have a aid money, you have a grants, and so just keep it like that. Okay. Then you have Americans who would also want a foothold in this area, and they would want, I mean, just to basically to counter the Chinese expansion, but then they would want to project it as some kind of a war against terror. So certainly, occasional terror strikes, just to make a convincing case, they will continue to happen, and Pakistan benefits from them because I mean, they need money for that. Okay. Besides that, there will be a multiple, other jihadist actors like Turkey will be very active. Turkey has already acquired the airport, and they eye upon the. I mean, with the fledgling Turkish economy, they will be very interested in the drug network of Afghanistan, and because as you've seen in the past also, Turkish state, especially the Erdogan-led state, have funneled arms, weapons, and drug money to terrorist groups across the globe, in Africa and all. So then you have Russians. Russians will be worried about the spread of the jihadist ideology in Central Asia, so they will also prefer to deal with Pakistan. Okay? And in this entire business, Pakistan can make a decent amount of money, by doing all the dirty work for different players. And
All
then
right.
all this suits Pakistan to keep India also under pressure, because as long as Taliban is in Afghanistan, Pakistan can, dare Pakistan can have the audacity to conduct a few terror strikes in India, and just go scot free, like, even Americans will shudder to act against them because they have their own dependency. Chinese, like they are our adversary and Pakistan's friends. Okay, so we are kind of in a pressure situation, like, because of this. So yes,
Interesting.
Pakistan will continue this game, but this is a very, I would say, mechanical part that I've discussed. But at a more philosophical and a strategic level, this is going to, in fact, worsen and make the whole this Islamist jihadist environment much more poisonous and much more dirtier. In the long run, it will come to bite Pakistan also. The state institutions will fail, and the Pakistan itself will become a. It is already becoming a highly radicalized and a very medieval barbaric society and a country. Okay, and this will spread to India also, because Taliban and ISIS, they have set an example of, a successful example of how Sharia rule can be established, and how democracy has no justification, is not, I would say, no relevant anymore. So for the Muslims, Sharia is the best. then the overall it will be problematic for India, because in India the current political and social environment, it kind of accentuates. I mean, nothing is happening, but just in terms of rhetorics, basically, just it's used by the Pakistani terrorist groups, basically. So as such, if you see the real action against the terror, we have not done anything, frankly speaking, not much. Okay, see, PFI is still functioning. Though it's a so-called, though I don't believe in the binaries of right and left. I mean, I find these terms completely useless when it comes to India. But for many analysts, this is a right-wing government. But then you see, I mean, apart from the rhetoric, nothing much has been done on the terrorism front. Okay, you still have a group like PFI functioning very strongly. Otherwise, I mean, we expected something totally different. And but this whole rhetoric of this right-wing government and Hindutva and all, it will be used by these groups like Jaish and Taliban, to recruit more and more people in Pakistan, and to incite. Okay, so this is how they operate. In the past also they've done that. Okay, so this is going to be a bit more problematic for us. In Pakistan, if the radicalization intensifies, then it immediately impacts India also. This will spread to Bangladesh also. This will spread to Central Asia also. This will spread to Maldives and Sri Lanka also. So we have a problem.
The sooner we realize it, the better it is. Absolutely, sir.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, you've brought out a couple of other things as well. That it may not be the factor that there is any terrorist attack or any major incident in India, but one thing that we've realized from this entire Afghanistan issue is that the information warfare part of it, the grey zone part of it, has been played with the maximum potential of any state.
Certainly. In Kashmir also, in Kashmir also, if you see, it will be very problematic for us. These guys will be sending those, I would say, unemployed Taliban-styled radical jihadists to Kashmir.
I mean, might or might not reach there, sir, but the main thing is that, those stupid videos that will get circulated around, which create more mayhem than one odd terrorist firing a bullet somewhere or throwing a grenade at a poor police officer's back, because that kills that one person. But in my opinion, the videos that are circulating around and which create more of a mayhem and propaganda for that side to push out into the narrative is more damaging than these terrorist groups as per se. And that is something that we are seeing with the whole Afghanistan issue. We've not been able to put a finger on the ground as to what exactly is happening in that country. Nobody's been able to do it. So that's because of the multiple varietal of information which is coming out there. So this has been an eye-opener, because you've really brought out how Pakistan has been able to repackage the same product, the same stinky old product, into a brand new uniform and a brand new tagline and a brand new this thing. And I think, when you were giving me the explanation, I realized why they used ISIS is because when you say ISIS, there is already an image which is there in your head of a brutal regime within the Iraq.
It's branding.
So they've picked it up for a purpose. They brought it out in front of the world, because the world will take a step back and say, okay, ISIS is something that needs to be reckoned with. They will not come onto the negotiating table. So Taliban automatically becomes the good Taliban, which is something that the Pakistanis have been trying to sell to the world for the past 40 years. Sir, thank you so much for bringing this particular thing out. I think it's something that all of us analysts who are looking at national security and regional developments must keep in mind, that the Pakistanis' game is not over. Sir, till next time, for another topic, another day.
Definitely.
I'd like to say only one thing.
Thank you so much.
Jai Hind.
Jai Hind. Namaskar. Thank you.